So this past week, myself and my free company, The Professionals, wandered into the binding Coil of Bahamut for the first time. We did it synced, which allowed us to play it as it was originally intended, with a little bit of an item level bonus. It went about as well as you'd think.
Oh shit!
I'm about to. Oh fucking
where are you, T-Rex?
All right, it's at about 10%. You want us to switch? And I'm dead.
After cutting our way through the Snake from Kun Fury, a group of sentient yoga balls, the worst staircase of all time, and then choosing not to take the stairs and instead take the elevator, we arrived at Turn 5 and Twintania, and it went about as well as you can expect.
I'm
dead.
I'm fine.
It's on me.
Ah, fuck!
Right into the
Anila, you need to get right under her now. Ah, shit. Shit!
Whoa.
All right, burn the...
It's
Motherfucker.
wipe.
That's a wipe, GG, wipe it up.
That's a wipe.
We died to like a lot of conflagrations. After about an hour of attempts, we had the first 3 phases pretty much down pat, despite the fact that almost everyone in our 8-man group had never done a Final Fantasy raid before or Binding Coil, and some of them had never done raids in general before. We managed to get a lot done. We had a lot of fun and made some progress. But despite some of us having an almost 40-point item level lead on Twintania, we got our asses handed to us. That's because Twintania is a very well-designed boss. When it comes to MMORPGs, and actually a lot of genres of video games in general, bosses are the top tier, top shelf, coolest things you can possibly do. Wait, that came out a little bit wrong. Unless you're talking about Shiva, am I right? So this, of course, gives rise to the question, what makes a boss interesting? Because quite frankly, we've got a lot of instances of great bosses, but we've also got a lot of really terrible ones. I mean, everybody remembers Algalon the Observer, but can you name the crazy cat lady who wanders around the middle of Ulduar? Her name is Araya, and she's just lonely. She needs some friends. You could say that Algalon is like the last boss, therefore he's crazy, but also, like, we remember Mimiron and Flame Leviathan. She's just not that interesting a boss fight, whereas these other bosses are really friggin' cool. When creating an interesting boss fight, there's 2 things we need to consider: theming and execution. When I think of theming, when it comes to boss fights, I think of it being the aesthetics of the boss. Nobody wants to fight a dude with a stick with banjo music in the background. That sounds dumb. The Shiva example from Final Fantasy XIV is a really good one for this kind of concept. And yes, I know I've been using a lot of Final Fantasy XIV examples. I've been playing a lot of that game lately. The arena looks like a frozen hellhole. Her abilities flash and shine as shards of ice fly all over the place. Her big ultimate ability, a giant flare which marks a stage transition in the battle, just feels awesome. All of this set to this great orchestral music that eventually gives way to this high-energy J-rock. The entire fight just feels good, even without really knowing the mechanics. And I don't really know the mechanics because I've done her like 3 or 4 times, and every time I get carried, it's really annoying. Yes, I'm not like super good. Give me a break. I've been back for like a month after like a year off. Shiva's a really fun fight because she looks and sounds and feels awesome, just like from the outside. She feels intimidating. She feels like a friggin' boss battle. Take away a lot of this stuff and you realize that having a fight with a boss in just a boring blank room doesn't feel nearly as cool as fighting a boss in this big epic event, this set piece, with all this nice set dressing scattered around you. It just feels good, and with a boss, you need to feel good. With video games in general, you need to feel good. I mean, fucking Platinum Games has basically built an entire catalog out of crazy, over-the-top, themed, and stylish fights. The other half of what makes bosses interesting and fun is in the meat of it, the execution, what the boss does, how the player interacts with the boss, and how the player eventually defeats them. I'm going to use a really interesting example from a new game that came out, which actually came out with really good timing because, I mean, I was doing this video anyway, and then it came out and it's perfect! Fury is this high-octane, high-intensity, incredibly difficult boss rush game that recently came out from the Game Bakers, and it is an excellent example of how bosses should be made to be awesome. I mean, the entire game is based on fighting bosses. If they didn't do that very well, it would not be a very good game, would it? Because Fury does bosses in a very conventional and interesting way. Every boss is an algorithm, and you're there to solve for X. While what's on screen right now might look like total fucking chaos to most of you, in reality, when you see it enough, you start to see the ins and outs. There is an equation here, and you are here to answer it. Fortunately, the answer is pretty much always murder, but, you know. A great boss battle is just as much puzzle as it is antagonist. It's just as much algorithm as it is enemy. They are kind of the same idea. You have to solve the game's puzzles. You have to get around the boss's mechanics. You have to find a way to do this, and often bosses are pre-programmed with a way to do this. Sometimes they're not, and those fights can be a lot more chaotic, but a lot of the time, there's a special, specific way to do this. And that's generally what makes it feel great. You've got the awesomeness of taking down a boss with the self-satisfaction of having solved a puzzle. These two come together to make the fight feel great. So this all brings us back around to Twintania. Pretty awesome boss fight. Let's apply these concepts and see if they work. So thematically, this fight is pretty damn cool. I mean, you're fighting a flock of dragons, so you can expect there to be fire, dive bombs, burning, and trust me, there's plenty of burning. We're also fighting them on Bahamut's petrified claw. Is it Bahamut or Bahamut? I mean, Mr. Happy says Bahamut, but I've other heard people say Bahamut, but I don't want another Nostoralius thing happening here. On the other side of the coin, you've got a lot of mechanics working together and in tandem to create this encounter. You've got things like the fireballs and conflagurates, where a conflagurate must be moved out of a group or else it will stun the entire group and eventually kill them in an explosion. But the fireballs can be used to reset a conflagurate's timer. Otherwise, the fireballs will do damage to a group and must be absorbed by as many players as possible, but not too many, because that reduces the amount of time a conflagurate has before it explodes. So you wind up balancing all of these mechanics with each other, and they all come together to form the puzzle that is Twintania. I have no doubt we're going to be coming back to her in the near future. I mean, a lot of us had a great time fighting her because she's just an interesting fight. Even if you're not winning, you're still having fun. Completing mechanics is its own little victory in and of itself. I mean, we're not there for the loot, and this shit's way out of date. We're there because nothing feels better than beating a badass boss. Why, hello there, and thank you very much for watching this video on boss fights. Basically my favorite thing to do in video games, like, bar none. Bosses are like the tits. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I don't expect it to be your favorite thing, but if you did enjoy it at least a little bit, please like or subscribe or all that stuff. Do you like boss fights? Do you have certain boss fights you love? Do you like things about boss fights? Do you think I'm wrong? Why don't you post a comment? I love talking to you guys. You guys are all fantastic. But thank you again for watching this video, and you all have a great one.